2 minutes ago, Britain felt like a pressure cooker outside a quiet hotel now housing asylum seekers. Hundreds gathered with banners and boiling frustration. Enough is enough, they shouted, not just at the building, but at a system they say has failed them. Just days earlier, a poll revealed what many already felt. Around 2/3 of Britons believe immigration is too high. Almost half say it is damaging the country. Over 4 in 5 say the nation feels divided. Tonight, that number is no longer ink on paper. It is a crowd in the cold demanding to be heard. More than 100,000 people have gathered at a far-right rally in London, organised by anti-Islam activist Tommy Robinson. Police say they made several arrests after attempts to breach barriers between the far right and counter demonstrators. The poll that gave anger a number. For years, people have watched the same pattern repeat in their lives. Rent takes more of the pay packet each month. Estate agents report dozens of applicants for a single flat. General practitioner surgeries are full before midday, leaving patients turned away. Classrooms designed for 20 hold 30 children, sharing worn textbooks. Headlines change, but the pressures do not. Record net migration, new visa routes, small boats arriving on grey beaches in Kent, hotels pressed into service as emergency asylum accommodation. Ministers promise the system will finally be under control. In homes across the country, the conversations are blunt. I do not mind people coming here, but how many more can we take? Why is my daughter still on the housing list while a hotel down the road is full of new arrivals? These frustrations are not isolated. They stretch across Midlands towns where factories have closed, coastal communities where tourism has dried up, and suburbs where one house now holds 3 families. On social media, the complaints scroll endlessly. On the ground, people feel promises have quietly failed. Then came the Ipsos poll. It did not create anger. It gave it a number and a headline. Almost half of respondents said immigration has a negative impact on the United Kingdom. A clear majority said it worsens the housing situation. Many said it strains hospitals and clinics. Around 2/3 said immigration levels are too high. More than 4/5 said the country feels divided. For those already frustrated, one line cut through everything. If so many people feel things are out of control, who is really in charge? Those numbers quickly left spreadsheets. They appeared in bold graphics, on news bulletins, on radio shows, in local community pages and across social media. In one corner, they were used to demand tougher borders. In another, they were cited as evidence that the national conversation had gone off track. Away from the studios, reactions were simpler. People saw the poll and realised, we are not a fringe. We are the majority. We should act like it. Anti-asylum protesters have marched on London. Hotel demos are now a weekly affair. Attacks on the streets have increased, leaving many black and brown Britons living in fear. From quiet frustration to loud voices. In a Facebook group for parents at a primary school, someone posted the poll with a single line, we are the 67%, we need to do something. A WhatsApp chat for residents near an asylum hotel went from complaints about traffic to planning a protest. The first demonstration was small. A few hundred people gathered outside a hotel, holding homemade signs and speaking through a single loudhailer. Police watched from a distance. Residents told their stories. A woman bidding for social housing for years and still waiting. A man standing in a general practitioner queue for 7 hours with his father in a chair. A mother unable to get her child into speech therapy. Some blamed government policy. Some blamed immigration. Most blamed both. On its own, that day might have stayed local, but Britain in 2025 is not built for local stories. A clip of an older man with a walking stick, nearly in tears, was posted by a national journalist. A young woman insisting she was not racist but distrustful of government numbers was cut to 20 seconds and spread on a video sharing app. A shot of officers standing between residents and hotel doors appeared with the caption, "Is this what control looks like?" Within days, the slogan spread far beyond that first car park. In another Midlands town, residents gathered outside a business hotel now housing asylum seekers. In a Scottish city, a column marched from the town square to a conference centre accommodating new arrivals. On the south coast, locals met after footage showed another small boat landing. Seen from above, Britain looked like a map of small fires. A few hundred people outside a hotel, several thousand moving through a city centre, 50 residents waving flags at a roadside. Drone footage of crowds in London and regional towns. Timeline from 1 minute and 30 seconds to 1 minute and 50 seconds. As the protests grew, the language hardened. Speakers stopped talking about concern in some communities and started calling themselves the 67%. This is not far right, one woman shouted. This is not fringe. This is most of the country finally saying no. The crowd answered, not with policy, but with the same 3 words chanted in the first hotel car park. Enough is enough. Essentially, what we know is 898 people arrived in small boats yesterday. They think around 13 boats. According to Home Office official figures, that means that 25,000 migrants have arrived in the UK crossing the Channel this year. To put that in context, enough is enough. That the people in these crowds are not uniform. On some streets, older white residents wrapped in flags dominated. On others, the picture was more complex. A mixed heritage mother pushed a buggy, insisting her anger was at government mismanagement, not the new arrivals. A man whose parents arrived in the 1970s worried that a broken system could provoke backlash against all migrants. A care worker with an African accent held a sign reading, "We came to help. They failed us both." Side by side, 2 stories were playing out, one of frustration over a system that feels broken and one of migration arriving at the heart of national debate. The 67% on the streets is not one march in one city. It is a patchwork of weekends and evenings from coastal towns to Midlands estates. In some places, the protests are almost like petition drives with banners. Families come with children. Local councillors hover at the edges, taking notes and taking care not to be seen as too close or too distant. People complain about general practitioner appointments, bus routes and school places, and then fold immigration into the middle of all of it. In other places, the atmosphere is sharper. Outside a hotel in a former industrial town, a man in a high-visibility jacket tells the crowd that the system is putting strangers ahead of locals. A chant starts about our own first. People nod because they feel they have been last for too long. If you point a camera at the families and the pensioners, this looks like a broad, anxious, middle demanding answers. If you point it a few metres to the side, the picture changes. At the edges, flags and symbols associated with long-standing far-right groups begin to appear. Chants that have nothing to do with housing or hospitals rise and fall. Counter-protesters arrive with anti-racist banners and accuse the organisers of stoking hate. That mix is where the story gets twisted. One television channel frames the marches as Britons of all backgrounds demanding answers on migration levels. Another leads with far-right groups seizing on immigration anger to spread hate. On social media, people post only the clips that confirm what they already believe. 2 realities form on the same streets. For organisers, that is both the nightmare and the temptation. Anger gets attention, attention gets numbers, but numbers also draw in those who want to turn a housing protest into something darker. Where do you stand on these protests? Are they a call for action, a warning, or something else entirely? Tell us in the comments. Every perspective matters. Make sure to subscribe so you don't miss future updates and in-depth analysis, and hit like if you value seeing the full story rather than only the clips trending online. When extremists smell a chance, where there is fear, there is opportunity. On encrypted messaging channels, some far-right activists talk openly about riding the wave of anger over migration. They share protest details, turn poll numbers into slogans, and circulate edited clips that strip away the families and leave only the shouting faces. At the same time, anti-racism campaigners warn that treating immigration primarily as a threat will make these groups stronger. They point to attacks on hotels and hostels, to graffiti, to people confronted in the streets simply because they look or sound foreign. On the ground, most people at these demonstrations would insist they are not there for hate. They are there because they cannot get what they feel they were promised. A house, a doctor, a school place, a sense of order. But they do not control every banner, every chant, or every camera angle. The risk is obvious. The more often the 67% gather in the street, the more chances extremists have to slip into the picture and claim to speak for everyone. While all of this is unfolding under grey British skies, another Briton is watching on screens. Watching how power watches the revolt. In a Home Office operations room in London, large screens flicker with a patchwork of live feeds. One camera tracks a line of demonstrators winding past shuttered shops. Another shows police officers holding the line against a sudden surge near hotel doors. A third captures counter-protesters chanting their own slogans behind a police cordon. Every movement, every gesture is watched, analysed, recorded. Alongside the video, graphs from the same polls that sparked the protests dominate the walls. A bar shows concern about immigration towering above lines for the economy, the National Health Service and housing. A pie chart illustrates how many people say immigration levels are too high. A line graph traces rising concern about small boats over recent years. Officials do not label this as anger or fear. They call it sentiment and pressure on the system. A senior civil servant points at the figures and says this is what the next election will be about. A political advisor mutters that a rival party is already drafting slogans using the 67% statistic. A policing commander watches the screens and worries about exhausted officers, some of whom have been on protest duty since the previous summer. Across town, at party headquarters, strategists replay clips from the marches alongside past speeches. They mark the gap between promises made and promises delivered. People think we lost control, one says. They do not believe targets or slogans anymore. Another replies, half serious, half weary. So we announced new ones for stricter rules, firm caps, flights, boats, numbers. We sound tougher than the last lot. In kitchens, pubs and living rooms, that conversation goes. Citizens remember prior pledges of control, deterrence and management, all of which failed to meet expectations. The gap between the figures on the screen and the anger on the street is a gulf no chart can capture. And on one particular day in one particular town, that gap would become visible in real time. The minister who turned back in a Midlands town that has become a symbol of the hotel protests. A government minister agrees to visit. The event is advertised as a listening exercise. For residents, it feels like a rare chance to speak directly to someone with real power. For the Home Office, it is an opportunity to be seen engaging with citizens. As the black government car turns into the street, word spreads through the crowd, voices rise. People press forward not to attack, but to be seen and heard. Officers, already tense from weeks of unrest in other towns, tighten their line.